Hello. First of all, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Michael Keeler, and I work for Stantec in Richmond, Virginia.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get started with the interview. So, how do you help conserve the environment?
The position that I hold, and actually the several positions that I have held throughout my career, have always been focused on mitigation or compensation. And you wouldn't do that unless there was an impact, fortunately. But I design and restore streams, same thing with wetlands. And so I think that it's a very rewarding job, actually, because while yes, impacts do occur, one of the things I try and tell people new to the field or new in their career is that impacts are going to occur. There's very little, if anything, that's going to stop them. Yes, some impact you can stop, but if you better the environment or improve the environment, because of that, because there's regulations that require mitigation or compensation to be done to restore an eroding stream, to replace a wetland with more wetland acreage and more wetland functions, then that's what I get enjoyment out of, and that's how I think my job in particular conserves the environment.
You're dealing with a lot of companies, and there are all these impacts, and you're working to conserve the environment. What kind of policies are there in place to help do this?
I can think of three main policies, honestly, that influence my job and ours here in particular. The first of which is ones that most folks are familiar with, Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. Section 404 specifically sets up the program for regulating dredge and fill within waters of the United States. It says that a permit cannot be granted unless you demonstrate that there is not another alternative that is both practical and less environmentally damaging. And then they also won't grant a permit unless you demonstrate that the nation's waters are not going to be significantly harmed. Through that permitting process, you have to demonstrate first that you've avoided impacts to some degree, then that you've minimized impacts to those that you're going to take, and then third, that you're going to compensate for those impacts. Section 401 of the Clean Water Act actually grants Virginia, gives them the requirement to certify that these projects comply with these regulations. And through that, Virginia has created the Virginia Water Protection Permit Regulations. That's the second regulation that we really deal with here. It defines some of the things we just talked about, and it also states requirements for a permit application. One of those requirements is to submit a compensation plan. It has your design, it has your planting plan, it has reference data, if available, monitoring plans, financial assurances, and long-term management plan. So it defines that, and then that's a compensation plan. The main regulation that we deal with compensation is the 2008 Final Mitigation Rule. It did not change when mitigation occurs, but it did change where and how it occurs. It did two things. It created a preference for mitigation banks first. Second, in order of preference was to contribute to an inland fee fund, and third in order of preference was to have the permittee responsible to do the mitigation. And then the second main thing it did was it required mitigation to be done on a watershed approach. So instead of just placing mitigation anywhere you want to, you've got to follow a scientific approach to where it's going to go, how it's going to be accomplished, how it's going to be designed, how it's going to be managed and maintained. And so those are the three main regulations that we deal with: Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, the Virginia Water Protection Permit Regulations, and the 2008 Final Mitigation Rule.
So what would you say is the favorite thing about your job?
There are, I would say, two favorite things about my job. and one is related to the first question you asked about how we conserve the environment. Doing that restoration and improving the environment is very rewarding. Monitoring it for its success is very rewarding. Helping to make sure that it's successful, developing plans to make it successful if it's not succeeding is rewarding. And the other aspect of my job that I like is there aren't a whole lot of jobs out there where you get to spend time both in the field and in the office. We get the best of both worlds. There are days when we honestly think to ourselves, it's a great day, we're out there doing something we love to do, and we think to ourselves, wow, I get paid to do this. Now, don't be misled, we have to go out in all sorts of weather, and those 38-degree and rainy days are not very fun, but a good mix is what I really like, and we have that here, and this position requires it. You've got to do your field work, you've got to do your office work. Typically early in your career you're going to do more field work, less office work. Most likely later in your career you'll do less field work and more office work. It's just kind of the natural progression of things. But those are the two aspects that I like the best.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that is all that we had to ask you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed meeting with you and talking with you, and I wish you luck in the rest of your class,
Thank you.
the rest of your college career, and remember Stantec when you graduate and you're looking for a job.
For
So,
sure.
We will.
mhm.
Thank you.
All right.